Hello, my name is Gregory Galvin. This is my CS230 Computing and Responsibility exercise meetup report. Today is April 5th, 2020, and I will be talking about the meetup opportunity that I was able to join and get some good information from. So let's jump right in. So the group that I was able to find in Meetup.com that I definitely took a particular affinity to was called OWASP Dev Slot Project. So there's a couple URLs up there. One's their Meetup, and then the second one is the link for the actual Meetup, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit. But so OWASP is the overseeing foundation for this dev slot project. So OWASP stands for the Open Web Application Security Project. And basically their goal is to create a more secure web environment, and especially with applications in accordance to security standards. And it's a community-led thing, so it's not like it's a business, but it's a group of people. There's several thousand members, and there's different chapters around the world, including one in the Bay Area, which I believe is based in San Francisco. And DevSlop itself is, according to their meetup bio, a collection of DevOps-driven applications specifically designed to showcase security catastrophes and vulnerabilities for use in security testing, software testing, learning, and teaching for both developers and security professionals. So that was a brief put out by OWASP themselves about their own product and this project that they're working on. And so this meeting that I attended in particular is called Secure Your Serverless Offense and Defense Measures with Terry Radischel. So this was actually today. I was luckily able to find this one, and I chose this not because it was the last day of the project, but because I work in IT, and so we do a lot of implementation with servers on client basis. So I was trying to see, what I could potentially learn from this about, potentially moving off of servers and stuff for our clients, and seeing, what exactly does serverless mean? Does it mean that, people aren't basing their web security off of servers, or if it's for developing in particular? So I wanted to find that out. So it ran from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which was about 10 a.m. This morning for us. And it was an online event. I was able to find it through Meetup, which was perfect, but it was hosted through YouTube Live, and it was being streamed from actually a Zoom meeting that the hosts had with one another, which is completely possible, by the way. And so we have the different meeting presenters. So we have the main hosts, who are from OWASP themselves. So Tanya Janka, so she works with OWASP. She's a founder of a website and a group called SheHacksPurple.dev, or SheHacksPurple, I should say. And so they specialize in different security protocols for software, cloud, that kind of realm, which is perfect for this topic. Nancy Garish, I think I pronounced her name right. So she is basically, another top leader in software security. And she works to assess security issues in main level code, especially with the Canadian government, which is actually really cool. And then finally for the main host, there's Nicole Bircher. So she is a professional information security consultant in penetration testing, red team. She during the course of the meeting had a lot of the technical questions for the guest. And so I was able to find all this information on the hosts from the DevSlop website itself. They had good bios on each of their members, and so all three of those people were part of DevSlop itself. And then the guest today was Terry Radichel. So she's the CEO of the Second Sight Lab. She's put out a couple books and different classes that teach security, and she's been working with moving companies from on-premises servers to cloud-based services such as Capital One and other major companies like that. And so this information I was able to find on the meetup itself. It had a little bit of bio on her. So let's move into what the meeting was about. So the first question that popped into my head when I saw the meeting, and of course it was the first question that they were able to luckily answer for their viewers, was what is serverless? And it's basically anything you don't have to configure your own server for. And so that still raised a lot of questions for me in terms of configure your own server. So does that mean a physical server, a cloud server? What about hosted servers through the cloud? Or is it just going to be like cloud-based services? So that was something that I was still curious about. One of the companies that Terry said that was already serverless is called iRobot. So iRobot, they're the company that does like all the vacuums, the smart vacuums. And so she was talking about how they were able to transition from having in-house configured servers to just moving to API, code that called API requests, and so the next big chunk that they talked about during the meeting was actually something really relevant for this class, which is the shared responsibility model with a serverless application. So typically when you're looking at some sort of application with an in-house server, or even with a hosted server, there is this responsibility shared between the cloud hosting provider, or the your own server hosting facility and the developer themselves, because the cloud, the server itself, and the tech teams required to run the server need to make sure that the server itself is really secure, and then also that the developer needs to know that they need to build their code around something that's not going to open up whatever the team that built the server together. They need to work together, and it's a shared responsibility if anything goes wrong. Now that we're moving to serverless, and you're pushing up to cloud services like AWS and stuff, everything that might go wrong in the code is now going to be on the developer's side, in the sense that the cloud solutions are pretty seamless at this point, and the only way that some potential threat is going to get through is through the code now. So that means that as a developer, you need to make sure that your code is secure enough that those breaches aren't going to be possible. So as they continued, as we go along with serverless, there's different things that we can do to help along with the code. So not just making sure that we have the proper protocols within the code, but you can add an API gateway in front of the application to make sure somebody isn't just getting in to get in. you can still filter through all those API requests that are going into the application. And then also to continue to log the application, it's a little bit different since you don't have a physical server, and you don't have that built-in logging practices. But that being said, it's not a good enough reason to log your data. So what they did, next talked about was like, how do you log, since it's not so easy anymore. But what Terry kind of said was that it still is, you have to look at what you're doing in the application and find it from there. So all the API calls that you use to hook up to those cloud services are going to have their own logs. So if you can pull down those logs and utilize those, that's going to be your best tactic for continuing to log, because that's going to continue your security. And so you just need to get access to those logs, and you need to make sure you know which APIs and cloud services that you're linking into. And as soon as you have that, you're going to have your logs. And so another question pushed by or asked by one of the hosts was, what is a service mesh and how to start using it. So a service mesh is technically used between containers, and it kind of filters through requests, but with cloudless, and actually I should say serverless, you're not going to be using meshes, but you're going to be using more of a traditional networking model. So the meshes which we had for a couple years started to build up and started to get a little bit more of prevalence in security in applications. Those are starting to, the more we move towards serverless applications, the less time is going to be, or the less that service mesh is going to be used, and more back to traditional networking and creating security groups, and that secures down the container. So that was really interesting. And so, the talk continued. How do you model threats and networking within your application? And they had some different applications, and they talked about, specifically like what different models work for which needs. And so if you're really worried about your security, Cloud Mapper is really good, because you're not sending that data anywhere else but your own local computer that you're running it from, and that's perfect for if you really have sensitive data that you're working on. That data is going to stay where it is. And so with that, it's how we apply that network and threat modeling to the serverless applications. And what they said was actually a good thing, even though it's a little bit annoying for non-serverless right now, is that there's no one-click solution to threat modeling, in the sense that you can click a button and it'll do everything for you. So it'll assess your network, it'll compare it against threats, all of that at the same time. But that's good for the serverless applications, because no serverless application is the same, and so you're able to kind of build that threat mapper and modeling to how your application works, and that was actually pretty cool to learn about. They also talked about different penetration testing, how best to deal with practices like that. They talked about the trends with how attacking's been going. Is it going to be on-premises servers or cloud? And Terry, the host or the guest, said, initially it was still a lot of on-premises, but the attackers have gotten pretty smart. I mean, they don't necessarily need to go directly into the cloud service, so they're hacking personal computers for developers and getting those credentials from those computers, and it's really interesting to know, that the cloud is no longer as secure as we thought it was, and so with that, we need to still keep up our good practices with even your personal computer security, making sure that that's all safe. and then going more into the security issues with serverless applications. So every time you make an API call request, that opens up a potential way that a hacker can get into the system. And so does it make it less secure if you're using a serverless application, or does it make it, what is the effect of that? And basically they're saying so that it depends on the implementation of the code itself. And basically the biggest thing is don't store API secrets, passwords, anything like that in the code itself, because that's going to absolutely destroy the any security you might have. And so the meeting kept on going. They answered some questions from the YouTube chat, and so overall it was 1 hour long, and basically just a Q&A to the guest about a bunch of these different questions about security in the serverless application. So unfortunately I was unable to ask a meeting question due to the YouTube chat and everything. I would have liked to have either met or asked a question to the group. But so if I would have asked a question, I would have asked if IoT would count as serverless, or because I'm not as familiar with the Internet of Things, how that's all structured. So does it still require a server, or is it just that linkage between the things? So like your fridge, oven, is it just that interaction, or does that hook still back up to a server that you're going to need? So that's what I would have asked. Unfortunately, I was unable to ask that question. Overall, I was very impressed with this. I was really glad that I was able to attend this. Like I said, I wasn't really sure what the topic was when I saw it, but because I was curious about the IT implementation, because I work IT, I decided to give it a try. And honestly, this was pretty cool to learn about, because I've built a lot of web applications myself, but they've all been based on servers, Apache servers mainly. And so learning about how you can make code that's kind of just based on the code itself, and then hooking up to different cloud services, that's really cool. And I'm might be interested in looking into that a little bit more. Would I go to another meeting from this group again? Absolutely yes. OWASP I've never heard of before I found this meeting, and so I was able to look into them a little bit more, and it's really interesting what they're able to do. And I've always been kind of into the cybersecurity kind of deal, and so OWASP is really a cool way that I might be able to get more interested in that and find out more information about that cybersecurity realm. And then would I choose another group? I would say for this project, no. OWASP, the dev slot for that was actually really interesting, and I was really glad that I was able to attend that. There was a lot of other stuff that I would have liked to attend too, but for all intents and purposes, this was an absolutely great group that I was able to find. And so in terms of the meeting and event at Cal State East Bay, I was unable to attend that due to the quarantining. I really wish that I could have. I'm a first semester transfer here, so it would have been really nice to be able to go, and find a group of people who have the same interests as me. But unfortunately, the quarantining came at a very inconvenient time for this, so I wasn't unable to get a part of any meeting. As for Stack Overflow, I've used Stack Overflow for years. I've not actually had an account until today, just because it's kind of been off the fly. If I have a question, I'll Google it, and Stack Overflow is typically the thing that'll pop up. But the question that I found that that pertains to a class that I'm taking. So I'm taking along with this CS 431, which is database architecture, and in addition to that, I build web applications too that implement SQL, PHP, and so one of the biggest breaches within SQL databases is SQL injections. And so one of the biggest questions is, how do you prevent SQL injection, which is basically, all those queries that go to the database from the application side. How do you prevent somebody from injecting their own data and getting data back that they want, even running a simple query like select all from a table. How do you prevent that? And the best way to do that, based on this question, is to use prepared statements, and put parameters on your queries so you don't run a full query, select all data from this table and then bring it back to the PHP level and parse it there. You're going to want to run a query that you first prepare and then run a quick injection on, close that connection, and then as soon as you're done with that connection, that query is pulling back only the data that it needs. So if you're running some sort of checking credentials, if somebody's logging into your application, you're not pulling back every user, every password that you have stored in your database. You're only saying, okay, if there's a user with this password, pull down that data, because it's going to make sure that your application is so much more secure. And then finally, GitHub. So GitHub, on the other hand, I've had an account for a couple years now, and so this is my account. So GitHub is a code repository. So basically, it hosts code that you're developing, and it provides a platform that you're able to push updates, pull the code down to specific endpoints, and then it's just really good for managing the code that you're writing and making sure that on a production level it's staying very clean. And it's really good for working in groups too, because you're able to make branches and people are able to update the code in their own branch, so that everything kind of works seamlessly, and that's perfect. And so with that, that is my exercise meetup. So overall, I was really pleased with the outcome of this project, and I hope to get more information from what I was able to find out from this, not only today's meetup, but for the actual organization itself. So in any case, again, this is Greg from CS230 for Exercise Meetup.